All right. Hello and welcome to Career Conversations. My name is Richard Weather with the APH Connect Center and Career Connect. This afternoon, we have with us another in our STEM series of people who we're interviewing who are blind working in the space. And I'd like to introduce you to someone I met for the first time last week and who I've talked to over email and over Zoom. Prior to that, Eli Sanchez. Eli, welcome to Career Conversations.
Hey, thank you for having me.
All right. Well, we are pleased to hear about you and have you share with us your story. We will ask our audience if you do have questions for Eli, you can put them in Q&A and or in the chat, and we will then proceed to ask those questions. I'm pulling up my questions. Lori is on her way. And so, Eli, I know you work in the assistive technology space, and as a hobby, you have done auto mechanics and even worked on the boat. Why don't you introduce yourself? Tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do, and we'll go from there.
All right, cool. So yeah, my name is Eli, and I'm from California. Um, I am completely blind, and I am one of the few that has no light perception whatsoever. So, we're fully immersed in this,
Hmm.
and it's been like this since I was about 4 years old. And now I am uh sorry, I forgot how old I was. I guess I'm too old. 28. So I just turned 28 last month on the 15th. So Um, so yeah, we've been at this for a while. I use like all kinds of tech, right? If it talks or does Braille, it's pretty much it's in my wheelhouse. And I went through the standard school system, so the K through 12, and also the junior college, and that's kind of me in a nutshell.
Fantastic. Um, so you credit your TVI and O&M as part of your success, your TVI, your O&M instructor, and those who've supported you. Can you tell us about your high school experience and what that was like?
Sure. Oh man. So I was not and still am not the best student. I'll just be the first one to tell you that. I am not a very good student. And it really started to show, I would say middle school, but definitely in high school, right? And it's not because, I was not a particularly good student in high school. I graduated with like a 2.6 GPA. Um, but all of that was because it was all of my own actions, right? My TVI, and the whole team in general, they never missed a beat. Everything I needed, they had for me, even when it was, I walk into a classroom and the teacher said, "Hey, that thing we had planned last week, we're actually doing this today instead." And they gave them a blank piece or gave them a print piece of paper, and they need me to have Braille in the next 30 minutes, and they do it. I couldn't have asked for a better team. Huge shout out to Kanan Richards and Neil McKenzie and Terry Wedler, of course.
Those are
Um,
great names. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I was super fortunate to work with them. And you know, I I I honestly spent most of my high school years working and networking with people, and I think that was because I I I don't know if unlucky or lucky. I'm not sure which one you want to look at it the way, but like I met a lot of people in my high school years
Hmm.
um that were, teachers or just workers in general, like just people in general that had gone to college and now are out of college. And now they're like 10 years into paying off their student loans. I'm not sure why, but that's like terrified me from the beginning. So I just school was not my main priority at the time. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And actually I got a real quick funny story about that is
Yeah. That'd be great.
when I was in middle school, I always liked math. The reason I like math is because I like compounded numbers because compounded numbers teach you how interest works, right? So I was all about it. Also, if anybody here has used a lathe before, you understand the XYZ axis, and I was all about it too, right? So I learned pretty quick that if I learn numbers, I learn basically banking, right? So
Hmm.
like by the time I was in my junior year of high school, I could calculate. I was shopping for savings accounts already, and I was calculating how much interest I was getting per year. Um,
That's pretty cool.
yeah, yeah, I loved it. Um, so basically, in middle school, I was doing high school level math in at the high school. So I'd go in the morning and come back to the middle school in the afternoon. So as a result, when I entered high school, I was already 20 credits ahead of where you typically are when you enter as a freshman. And
Right.
by the time I was a senior, I wasn't going to class enough. So a truancy officer went and got me out of class one day and took me into the principal's office. And principal's like, "Hey, dude, like you gotta start showing up to school more and turning in your stuff more, or else you're not
Mm.
gonna graduate." I'm like, "What do you mean?" It's like, "You literally do not come to school." And they go, "We're gonna start taking credits away." And I said, "Well, how many?" And they gave me a number, and I said, "Well, and how long do I have?" And they gave me a number. Then I did
Hmm.
the math. I'm like, "Well, by my math, it looks like I'm only gonna lose 10 credits." And she goes, "Yeah." And I said, "But I'm ahead of 20." She goes, "Yeah." I'm like, so that means if even if you take the 10, I'm still ahead by 10. She goes, "Yeah." I'm like, "Well, then keep the credits. I'm gonna go catch fish." You know, but I'm telling you, like everything I did in to
Yeah.
myself in school was all my choice. You know, it was never because of lack of access. Even like one particular one sticks out is when a bio teacher of mine in my freshman year
Yeah.
had me do a microscope test, and I tried to explain to her, I'm like, I cannot see a single thing. Microscopes will not help me. And she refused to hear it, was like, nope, you gotta do the test. You gotta do the test. And my TVI and team, like everybody was super cool. Like I remember just sitting there and all of them were like on the phone, email, everything, trying to figure out like how are we gonna get him to actually pass the test. Then I finally kind of relayed to them, I'm like, look, I honestly don't care if I pass or not because I don't think this is possible. Like I can't look through that microscope and describe what's under there, right? So, of course, I failed the test, but like what stuck out to me was like the amount of drive that everybody had to help me get the information out of that test, right? And to me, that was pretty incredible. I look back on it now, and it's just, uh, I don't think I could have. I don't think a better team would have been put in that position.
That's great.
Yeah.
Eli, I want to introduce you to Lori, and Lori's with us, and we'll be assuming the questioning.
Hey, hey,
Thanks,
Lori.
Richard. How are you? Sorry about that. So I know when we had spoken earlier, you talked about taking um, welding twice while you were in high school.
Yeah.
And so was that when you developed your desire for fixing things and learning about mechanics, or was it something else?
I've always had that. Um, I mean, I remember I still had a little bit of vision left, so I must have been around 3 years old. And for Christmas, I got this little toy set, hammer, screwdriver, all kind of
Hmm.
stuff in the box. But the screwdriver surprisingly was good enough, right? The flathead and the Phillips.
Uh-huh.
And I remember taking those out and going out. We had but we're a big family. So everybody pitched in like $50 and we bought this kind of crappy boat, outboard boat. And I'd go out there and I figured out that I could take parts off the motor. And it was hilarious because everybody thought I was just playing around with my plastic screwdriver and stuff until they realized that, oh, there's a panel missing off the outboard. And I'm like elbows deep inside that outboard just checking out what's in there, covered in grease and oil. I
Oh boy.
mean,
Yeah, so
it's
your
something I've
your
always,
desire clearly started early.
yeah. I mean, I love it. And I love taking things apart, sometimes even put them back together.
Hmm.
But welding was actually the first chance I ever had to do it in a space where like um I actually had a purpose of doing it, right? Before then it was kind of like, well, let me just see what's going on here. It's like pure curiosity. But the welding class was like, I have a goal to meet. I have something to do. I have to turn something in, right? Uh and I mean that was like my first big challenge 100% because I never had deadlines on this kind of stuff before, but with this welding thing, I mean, we would weld up gas tanks for old Mustangs and then would go race them at Sears Raceway here in Northern California, right? So we had to weld up the fuel tank in time for that race, right? Um,
Yep.
it was just it was the first place I really got to grow in a space like that. And also freak out the school staff, right? Imagine like your only blind kid in school walking around with like a flaming hot acetylene torch with blue flames coming out the front. Like, just picture that, man, amongst like 30 kids, and there's oxygen and acetylene tanks everywhere that could just explode at any minute.
Well,
That
and
was my favorite
it's
piece.
it's interesting that you're raising this, and I'm not laughing because it's kind of funny and dangerous. I'm laughing because I see things in posts from teachers of the visually impaired who might have a
Yeah.
student who's interested in taking welding. So I love that your teacher, your welding teacher, was so open to it. Um, what do you think you did, and how did you make that class work for you?
Um, on my part, all I had to put was the drive. That's it.
Uh-huh.
Mr. Lee did the rest. He was my welding teacher because um, you know, I I'll just be fully honest with you. Like I didn't know at what capacity I could operate in that class. I had never worked with acetylene torches before. I never worked with the welder before. Um, I grew up around grinders. I knew grinders, sawzalls, drill presses, all that stuff, but those are relatively safe compared to an
Yes.
acetylene torch, right?
Yep.
Um, so I think Mr. Lee just had the right amount of crazy in him to let me do it. Um, and I remember like the principal would get on him about like why he's not in the class like supervising me at all times. And
Hmm.
he was very clear. I remember he said it right in front of the class for them when they came in. It was like the principal, the vice principal, and then a couple other people they were giving a tour, and they were all freaked out because they had no idea there was a blanket in there. And he's like, I got stuff to do. There's 35 other kids in this class. Like, I can't just be tied to him. Like, if he lights the place on fire, that's what we got fire sprinklers for. You know, he was awesome. He was awesome.
So, um, are there any adaptive techniques? And briefly, I'm not looking for like a long answer, but anything that maybe you did to make yourself more comfortable, or anything that you might do to make something more safe to you as a person who's blind or low vision in with welding, or anything related to your mechanical side of things.
I don't, um, so like the adaptive techniques, the biggest thing I learned with Mr. Lee was the thought process of making jigs and guides. Because he would
Hmm.
even do it himself. He was an engineer, right? So he showed me that like if I have to make complicated hand cuts on pieces of metal, I should make myself a jig first that's softer than the original metal. So
Hmm.
that way I can kind of follow the outline of that jig. And if I do grab two pieces of metal at once, well, anybody who's worked with a grinder before knows that if you grab a big piece of metal like that, the grinder's going to shoot back at you and cut your hand open.
Hmm.
But if you use a softer guide than the piece of metal that you're cutting, well, it's a pretty good given that if it's cutting through that metal, it's going to cut through that guide even better. So you won't have that kickback. Um,
Ah.
yeah. So if you're cutting steel, use aluminum. Uh, if you're cutting half-inch steel, use three-quarter inch or a quarter-inch steel to use as a guide, right? Anything like that.
Hmm.
Um, so I mean, it pretty much applies to everything I do today. When I build things, um, out of wood or metal or whatever I'm working with, like I'll usually build me a jig if I know that I'm going to be doing some complicated cuts.
Hmm.
Hmm.
And, it's better to sacrifice a piece of wood or metal than your finger.
Yeah, oh yeah, that's
Yeah.
true.
But
That's
safety
true.
safety is all relative here, man, because, I'll still like I will still hold I'll still hold a 2-inch piece of steel in my hand and cut with an acetylene torch with it. So I mean that's a ridiculously hot flame, probably
Yeah.
like 5 inches, half a foot in front of your fingertips. So uh, just take safety as we say some people say in the shop, right? Safety third.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Otherwise,
So
everything else would hold you back.
right, right. I mean it's kind of the mindset you have. And it doesn't apply just if you're visually impaired or not. This is because I've
No.
I've 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 run independent living skill classes before, whether independently on my own or with other instructors.
Hmm.
And this same theory applies to whether you're cooking or cutting in the kitchen or cutting in a metal shop. No matter what you're doing, if it involves sharp things or hot things, expect yourself to get cut and burned because I mean that's what you're working with.
Yep.
You know, um,
Great.
just just try not to just try not to make it a habit.
That's true.
Yeah.
So, were you working doing mechanics on cars and things like that while you were in high school?
So in high school, I was just manual labor.
Uh-huh.
I started working with my co with my uncles at 8 years old, and we were a bit broke growing up, and so if you could walk, move hands, and talk, I mean, there's a good chance you could work.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so all through high school, I was just digging trenches, pouring concrete. Uh, just whatever I could get my hands on to work after school with my friends and family and whatnot. But mechanics didn't start until I got out of high school.
Uh-huh. And was
Yeah.
that partly to support yourself financially?
Yes.
Okay.
100%.
And and I think, as an individual who grew up um in a family where labor was important, I think that's also probably what gave you such good drive to develop your skills.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. I mean, uh so this is another point whether you consider it being blessed or not is I mean, I've never been one to just sit still. I just can't do it. I'm the worst person to watch a movie with. Um, so I think that's part to do with what I got going on here is I refuse to stay still. I want to learn something. I want to do something with my hands and be out
Hmm.
there talking with people.
Hmm.
And that helped me a lot, right? Because with mechanics, I was doing all of the above, right? I
Right.
I would talk with customers, work on stuff, and keep the ball rolling,
Yeah.
look for work.
And
Yeah,
bringing money in for yourself and for the family.
that's
That's
right.
that's important. That's really
That's right.
important.
Yeah, you got it.
Great. Fabulous.
Yeah.
So, um, now you have a certificate in assistive technology from California State Northridge. Could you explain to us a little about what that certificate entails? It's different from the certified assistive technology specialist for people who are blind or low vision. I'm screwing the name up on that, but I think you
That's
know
all
what
right.
I'm getting at.
Yeah. So the biggest thing about this certificate and the reason I did this course is because they put a big focus on um uh they worded it different, but basically report composition,
Hmm.
right? Because if if we know exactly what people need, but we can't convey that information to other departments, what good is it, right? So, like the AT stuff, the assistive tech that been working with, a lot of it was just by necessity for my own stuff,
Hmm.
and also, I where I live is kind of it used to be a way more rural area, so I'm about an hour north of San Francisco. Um, so when I was in school, my options, if I needed to learn tech, was pull me out of school and go to San Francisco for the day and go learn some tech at Lighthouse, and then come back
Hmm.
and have to make up that day, or just kind of suck it up and learn on the fly. And I chose to learn on the fly. And as a result, I mean, I remember being like in fifth grade all the way until I got out of high school, and they would pull me, other TVIs would come from around the county, and they pull me out of school to go work with their students to teach them how to run CCTVs back when they were called CCTVs, um, JAWS, and uh, back when the Braille No M Power was around, and then the
Hmm.
Apex,
Oh yeah.
all these things. So. For me, the biggest, I knew the tech, but I didn't know how to convey the needs. So
Hmm.
this course taught me a lot on how to compose a good report, right? A report that you can turn in and you'll get another person needs met. Uh, and it was, uh, I mean, honestly, the single best thing I could have done because I came out of that course and got dropped um, into work. And I mean, I was ready to write reports as soon as my first day was in there, so I
Hmm.
was good to go. And I even had the opportunity to train some other staff on my report writing skills, and we got pretty good at writing our reports.
Well, report writing and those types of things are essential tasks, and often
Yeah,
tasks that many of us don't like.
yeah,
I
yeah.
I personally like dealing with the people and don't like writing reports, so I
It
can
is a single
totally,
worst part of this job. Yeah,
yeah.
it's sitting down and trying to like it's sitting down and trying to convey to somebody another department that probably isn't even in the same state as you and the person you're
Hmm.
working with on why this person is a really good worker and they
Hmm.
deserve, not just deserve it, they have their legal right to have JAWS installed onto their work computer. And you have to come up with an entire way to articulate that it is a good idea to do so. Like, I mean, that's the hardest thing because I mean, it's so obvious why it's a good idea, but
You
legal
have to
reasons.
justify it to somebody
Right.
who doesn't understand the assistive technology and the accessibility need behind it.
Correct. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah. And I would
Eh,
assume that that may be coming harder and harder with more states having vocational rehabilitation providers that are not blindness specific, meaning
Correct.
that harder to justify things. Great.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, essentially, you could be dealing with somebody who still thinks that, you know, that a special computer has to be purchased for an individual that talks, not just, it's not just software. It has to be a special computer, and you have to convey that it's not a special computer. It's any computer that can support JAWS, you know?
Hmm. Yep.
Yeah.
So now you're working in the area of assistive technology. Can you tell
Mhm.
us a little about what that entails and how you see clients or consumers,
Oh yeah.
whatever you
Yeah,
call them?
yeah. So, again, I've been volunteering in this field for probably going on almost 10 years now. It's been a long time. But I haven't been paid for this work until since I got my first payment for this kind of work in 2017. But I didn't do it as an actual job until late 2018, right? Because I never wanted to work in an office, but then I realized, well, I can go around and meet people at different places. So I basically the way I like to tell people I started from the top down. So I I started working with uh individuals that were 65 and older, basically. So I was working for a nonprofit called the Earl Baum Center at the time, Earl Baum Center here in Santa Rosa, California. Working for them, and primarily it was with older individuals that were already retired, not looking to work, so they weren't eligible for Department of Rehab services. And it was just things like, this one always sticks in my head. So I was super lucky to work with a handful of World War II vets. And these guys were 98, 99, 101, and they still had like pretty awesome vision. I mean, they would drive up to their appointments still. Um, but they were starting to lose their vision enough to where they couldn't see their phone anymore, and all they wanted to do was look at pictures of their grandkids on their phones. So I show them how to zoom in and zoom out, and they'd say
Hmm.
thank you, and they'd leave. All right. And and then I started meeting some folks that retired early because of their vision loss, and I'm like, well, like your job really doesn't it's not impossible to do with some assistive tech. Like, why don't you continue? And they'd be, they'd have their reasons, of course, but the main one was, well, I didn't know it was possible. So then I thought, well, how do I make sure people know that it's possible? So then I was lucky to work with another company out of San Francisco, still as a contractor, and I got to work all around the Bay Area. I used to do about 400, 200 to 400 miles a week around the Bay Area and in Northern California, and working with anybody pretty much under anybody who was still working, right?
Hmm.
And as I was doing that, I was noticing that when I came across individuals that were blind from a very young age, there were certain things that were missing in their skill set to be employable individuals in the job market, to be, very competitive individuals.
Hmm.
And so as a result, I am kind of where I am now is working with the Cat Northwest team. Um, and we work with the K through 12 system, so 3 to 21, and we support um, staff who support the blind and low visionly impaired. Um, and I got into this because I've seen what it takes to be a blind or low vision individual and be employed and stay employed and make, not just well, I'm in California, right? So minimum wage here is 16.25, $16.25. It's not, and that's actually what I started at, if anybody's wondering, is $16.25. Um, so a lot of the jobs that are set aside for individuals with disabilities are paying minimum wage. And I don't want those jobs. I've worked at them and they're a lot of work for a little bit of pay. And I want people to get the jobs that are more pay than work, right? So, I want you to be sitting at close to that $100,000 mark. And for that, you got to be competitive in the job market. I've seen what it takes to be competitive in the job market. I've worked with members of pretty high ranking branches of the government, places like the
Hmm.
FBI, the IRS, different banking institutions. I've seen what it takes. And there's no reason why, if you have the drive to do it, you can't get there. And the biggest thing I told people during COVID um, was as long as your tech skills are as good or better than your other coworkers, there's no reason why you can't get this job and keep it. Um, so I guess to answer your question is after all that is yeah, I do it all. I'll work remotely, I work in person, whatever the needs are, I'll meet it.
Hmm.
Um, and now I get to work primarily with the kiddos and help them prep for life out of systems like schools for the blind all over the country and stuff, and make sure they're prepared when they get out of the system and into adult services.
Great.
Yeah.
So I have to ask you,
Uh-huh.
what are maybe two or three things that you see as essential skills that pe young people who are blind or low vision may be lacking training in?
Your
Or
keyboard,
maybe, oh,
typing,
interesting.
typing. I will literally scream it like for as long as I can. It is your typing skills on a QWERTY keyboard, no ifs, ands, or buts about it. That's it.
So I'm a
And
dinosaur. I learned on a manual typewriter, electric
hey,
typewriter.
so let me ask you, do you still remember the typing test you would have to do before you would get a job?
Um, well, by the time I started working,
Mm-hmm.
we were using computers, but we
Uh-huh.
used we used to do our typing tests on the type. I started learning in
Yeah.
second grade, and I had no vision, but I
Mm-hmm.
used to lean forward to try to look at the paper. And this was
Oh
so
yeah.
funny. My mobility instructor, who I had never met before, came in, and sh I remember hearing her say to the teacher, the visually impaired, as if I couldn't hear her, "I thought you said she couldn't see."
Right.
And it was like I was leaning forward to look at the letters I was typing, but I couldn't see
Yeah.
anything. But
Right.
I really think that learning on something like a typewriter forced me to learn to be accurate.
Yeah.
Um, because it really I had to make sure that before I hit that key that it was the right letter.
Right.
Um,
Yeah,
you
because you
know,
couldn't
I
just backspace over it like we can today, right?
nope, couldn't do
Right.
that. Couldn't
Mm-hmm.
do that. No.
Yeah.
Um, what um this is sort of unrelated, but I'm curious. Do you think that Braille keycaps are a positive or a negative factor when teaching keyboarding?
Negative.
I agree with you. Okay.
And
I'm curious. And maybe
for
you could
one muscle
explain
memory
why.
fact. Yeah, so muscle memory is when you're reading Braille, you're scrubbing a page. You're not
Mm,
tapping a page. You're scrubbing with the pads of your fingers.
yep.
That is the complete opposite muscle memory action you want to program into your hands for typing.
Yes.
You don't want to scrub on a keyboard. You want to tap on a keyboard.
No, I agree
Yeah.
with you.
hmm
Yeah.
And for anybody wondering, again, I've done a lot of work with the federal government and many states. I've been to, I mean, I get around a lot. Um, and for the federal government, before 1996, the majority of the jobs in the federal government required you to type a certain speed at a certain accuracy. I don't remember what that was, but just to be a, secretary at the
Hmm.
IRS or whatever you'd like, you had to do a certified typing test and be certified by a separate party. Today, well, let me back up. So, as a couple years ago, for about 15 years, that wasn't a thing. They took that away, and now it's actually coming back because they've seen the consequences of that. It's less efficiency.
Hmm.
It is more time for doing tasks. So there, for the federal government now, this most of the standards are, and you can look this up on governmentjobs.com, or if you're in California, Cal Careers. You, the most of the jobs require you to type 40 words per minute at a 75% accuracy, and it has to be verified by a certain party. Here in California, it is um, I think they're called. There's actually a couple organizations, but one of them is um, Leap, I believe, over in Sacramento.
Oh
That's
yeah,
one of the bigger ones. Oh yeah, Richard, you live over there, right? Somewhere around there.
correct. Yep.
So that organization, you go in, and if you have a disability, you can adjust for times and all that, but you have to be verified by a party there, and they have to sign a certificate that says you met the requirement that you can type 40 words per minute, 75% accuracy minimum, and then you take your certificate, and it has to go with your application to the job, because if that certificate is not with application, they won't even bother to look at your resume because it doesn't
Right.
matter. If you do not meet that if you do not meet that typing exam certification, you won't even be considered. And even more so with AI these days, because a lot of people don't realize that AI is who is sorting through job applicants these days. They don't have staff assigned to that anymore. So AI has a checklist. They look for, does this person have a cover letter, a resume, and a typing certificate? And if it's missing any one of them, AI just pushes you to the back.
So, Eli, just to clarify, LEAP, for those who are curious, stands for the Limited Examination and Deployment Program.
There we go.
Not to be
Very cool.
confused with Leap in Vermont,
Right. Many other
which is a
acronyms. Right.
That's where I
which is
thought
a
you meant, and I was very confused about
Yeah.
that. Yes.
Oh yeah. I forget that California isn't the whole United States.
Right.
so as a person who has almost no vision right now, I believe, do you
Mhm.
train individuals with screen enlargement or video magnifiers?
So I have no light perception at all. I'm fully blind.
Okay.
So, but I at one point I was certified from Premium Scientific to do Zoom text training.
Hmm.
I've done Zoom text trainings. I just I'm at a position now where I have enough work to do JAWS and Braille, which is the stuff that is my bread and butter.
Your
And I
love.
don't yeah, I don't have to sit there and be like, well, like how does you see how the color scheme changed? I'm like, no, and I'm like, oh, I forgot to click on something, right? So, I for lack of better words, I guess you'd say I'm fortunate enough to keep myself in my comfort zone, I guess. But
I am
I
so happy to hear that you mentioned Braille
yeah.
displays.
Oh yeah, braille displays are awesome. I mean they're honestly they're the best thing to come out since the computer, I think.
Eli, this is Richard and Lori. Before we head on over to some questions, which we do have in the chat,
Mhm.
of all the technology that Eli, uses, not your iPhone, what
Uh-huh.
is your favorite piece of technology that Eli loves, like for fun and play, not just for work?
My 3-inch pocket knife.
Yes, all right.
That never leaves my side. Because I mean, I buy new appliances like a microwave. I figure out where the start button is. I take my pocket knife and I score it. And I'm pretty sure I avoided my warranty
That
on it, but I don't
works.
care.
Yeah, it
You know?
does. It
Yeah.
doesn't fall off the screen,
That's a low
right?
tech
It
solution
doesn't
right
fall off the
there.
screen.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My stove, it came with visual marks where hot, high, medium, and low, but they're not tactile marks. So I took my knife and scored it. It's my stove. I'll do what I want with it.
Yeah, yeah.
When you when you move or sell your house, that's
Oh
somebody
yeah, they're
else's
gonna be like,
problem.
"Who went crazy with the knife in here?" I'm like, "That'd be yours truly, sir." Yeah,
I
but
like that
yeah,
And
answer.
hands
it's a
down. I
good one.
mean,
Yeah.
it's the best thing a blind person can have. I mean, look, when you get into like me and Richard were at in Kentucky at NFB annual, and I
ABH,
mean, Richard,
APH.
oh yeah, and how many canes do you think were in any given room at all times, Richard?
Quite a bit. I wouldn't
Yeah.
know. Canes and dogs, quite a bit. A couple dozen.
Canes and dogs.
Yeah,
So here's the
Yeah.
thing. I would not recommend scoring the dog with a pocket knife, but you can definitely score your cane.
this is true.
Yeah.
I
So, my cane's I have my little slash marks on there, so I know that like if I find one that has a long slash mark and a medium slash mark and then another long slash mark on the
hmm
handle, that's
Yep.
mine.
I
Yeah.
love your creative approach to things, just from being curious to tinkering with technology, with automotive things. I think that's what I tell people. You have to be curious to be self-sufficient, to be independent, to
Yeah.
be motivated, and I think that gets you a long way.
Oh yeah.
And thank you for sharing that. Katie, do you have any questions yourself, or from the chat?
So yes, and I just want to make a comment too that I have my boyfriend is an assistive technology trainer, and he says the same thing about typing, that people come to him and they can't type, and he's like, well, you need to learn, we need to start with typing to get you to, before we can even talk about learning your technology, right? So
Hmm.
just that fundamental skill of typing is so important to, to have in your toolbox, so to speak, since we're talking about tools and things tonight. But
Yeah.
I thought it was interesting too that you noticed that, Eli, that you have folks that just don't know how to type, and
Yeah.
that's something we
It
need to work on as a community, and get
yeah, it is
get
the
people in
single
that
biggest
space.
barrier to employment for
Yeah,
individuals.
yeah.
Yeah.
So we do have a couple of questions if you'd like
Uh-huh.
to take those.
Let's do it.
Um, Kind of on the tech side, wondering when you received your first electronic braille display. Was that in your school years, or when did you start using refreshable braille?
The Braille note, um, I can't remember what it's called now, the one before the Empower. The one where like
Ah,
if
yes,
you
that's
if you
that
let
was
it
my
die, it
first one
erases
too.
itself. Yeah.
Yeah, good stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. I
Did
was
you have that in school, or were you out of school
yeah,
by then?
I was in second grade, I believe.
Wow,
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And we have another question here asking about what the certificate is that you were talking about earlier. You have a certificate in something.
Yeah. So certified, it's a certificate in, oh man. Um, it is the Assistive Technology Certification out of Cal State University, Northridge. Um, I
CSUN.
can't,
Yes, that's
yeah,
right.
Mm-hmm.
CSUN. Yeah,
Hmm.
I
Yeah.
can't remember the exact name because it's been a few years now, but
I
I mean, you can type that into Google.
I
Right.
think there
Like,
may be a link to it in the blog, the bio blog that we have for you.
Which is in the chat
Ah,
as well. Yes,
yeah.
hey, there we
that
go.
sounds about right.
Look at the proactive team.
How long was that program, Eli? Was it a year? Was it paced at a reasonable, or what was expected of that?
It was August to December.
Oh,
Okay.
okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah.
All
Others?
right. Yeah, we have a comment here from someone who took shop class at the Louisiana Center for the Blind, and they were using
Hey.
power tools a lot.
Uh-huh.
But um, they were saying that they are interested in how you got into welding, because they think that's probably more dangerous than them using a radio arm saw, which I don't know. So that's just their comments and observations. So someone else who's worked in the power tool space. For me personally, I'd be afraid of losing my fingers, whatever tool I was using, pocket knife or otherwise. So um, yes.
So, any good welder will tell you that they have not seen their welds in years. And that's because when you are TIG welding, the light that is given off when you are making that chemical reaction is the same as the UV rays that comes from the sun, and it quite literally cooks your retinas uh, into submission. So
Wow.
you will go
Wow.
completely blind if you look at your welds for, I think they said an average, you can look at your welds for a week straight and you will lose half of your vision.
Oh my.
Yeah. So that's why you see welders. You can go to the store and check them out. They have welder shields. They're
Hmm.
helmets that have the big shield that comes down over your face because
Hmm.
there's a thick filter. It's a glass. Well, the fancy ones, like the high-end ones, are glass, but the cheaper ones are just layered plastic with a tint that filter out as much UV light as they can, but doesn't get it all. So it's meant more for like spot checking,
Mm-hmm.
but you cannot look at your weld. I mean, all the welders that have are now blind now, right? And that's why I
Wow.
got into this field is because Mr. Lee and then another guy I was able to make friends with, they convinced me. They're like, look, they both had been in the field 20 plus years, and they go, well, I haven't seen my welds in about 20 years. I'm like, why can't you do it? I'm like, well, let's do it, man. Right?
Yeah.
So
Mm.
I mean, it's a very tactile and audible um, practice. You have to listen to how the the wire is binding to the metal that you're working with. You have to feel how the welding gun is vibrating in your hand to make sure the wire speed is feeding out at the rate that you need it. Um, there's but everything besides your vision, because when you use your vision, you're gonna cook it out of existence.
Wow.
Huh.
Yeah,
That's fascinating.
Did
it
not
is,
know
right?
that. Yeah.
Yeah, me
Yeah.
either when I got into this field.
Wow.
But like when you see 60-year-old welders, 70-year-old welders, well, it's because they don't look at their welds.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow.
Yeah, thanks for
All
sharing.
right. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's really interesting. So we have another question here asking, how do you um, avoid burnout from teaching AT?
Um, yeah, that's a good one. I guess I would say just actually I don't know because given the nature of my job, it's always different, right? It's people come to me with different job positions and have different job duties to meet. But mainly you can get burned out if you're doing the same thing over and over again. But that's almost impossible to do in this field because software is always being updated. Uh, key commands are changing. So if you stop learning, you're going to become obsolete pretty quick, right? So it's if you're getting burned out from teaching tech, I would say change up your teaching style and reach out to the people you're working with for some criticism and some feedback. so that, you know, you might be doing the same thing over and over and over again because you think you see results, but maybe it's not, you're the only one seeing those results, right? Uh, so, for me, like I try to keep people engaged. My philosophy is, especially when I'm doing like a group presentation or anything, is if you just wanted me to talk to you all day, you could have just watched the YouTube video without having to check in with me, right? You could have laid in bed watching a YouTube video. So if you and I meet, we have some dialogue going back and forth, whether I'm one-on-one with you or we're in a 80 group setting or 80
Mhm.
person setting, right? We're having dialogue. The group is talking, everyone's talking, we're all awake. And honestly, that's more for me than anything else because I need to keep chatting with people. So that's kind of it is engage with your people, man. That's it. You got to really engage with your people. And if you engage with people, I don't think you could there's no way to really get burnt out.
Thanks for sharing. I think that was the end of those questions, Katie. If not, let me know. I do want to ask you a question, Eli, and Lori, if you've
Yeah.
got other questions too. What you may have brushed on it earlier, but what is your view on AI and training with AT? Is that going to be a help for you and those you serve, or not, or do we know?
It's going to shake some things up. It's going to
Mhm.
shake some things up because you know, um it's for the past couple of years we've been able to get contracts for testing websites and all that stuff, you know. And I still have some people coming to me saying that they want to be trained on all the tech that I know because they want to become accessibility consultants or auditors or, there's all kinds of names for it, but
Yeah,
basically just, checking accessibility. And it's not going to be a job, you guys. It's not a, it's a dying market and it's going to be a fast death because I, there's AI is just able to gather so much information and it works day and night, 24 hours a day. And it can do an accessibility check way quicker than any of us can, even as a group. And the best part about it is AI does not demand payment. Okay, it does it for free as long as you program it. Um, but I would say the upside to that is now we have a new market to explore, right? And I don't know what that looks like yet, but I intend to find out at some point. Is how can you put yourself in a position to where you can benefit off of that? Um, so like for me, I use it to write some reports now. It's pretty awesome. It cuts down on my paperwork time.
hmm yeah,
Um, you can use it for just ideas, right? If you're having trouble coming up with a way, for an NT instructor, it's not just about knowing the AT, it's also about understanding how you can convey that information that you know to somebody else that doesn't think like you, right? So sometimes, you check in with the person you're working with and like, hey, are you understanding what I'm putting out? And they go, not a single clue. So then you can kind of gather their personality and I can run some thoughts through AI and see what it can give me back about how to convey information to a person that thinks like this or that, right? And I can get some ideas on how to better push information out.
that's
Uh,
very creative.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's it's a changing market, everybody. I'll be if you haven't heard it yet, I'll be the first one to tell you that all those accessibility checking jobs and all that, they're gonna be dead real soon. And we already see it happening. So get
Yeah,
yourself in a position to learn a new skill, and that's new skills are not bad things. It keeps the brain healthy.
Yeah, it
that's
does.
right. It
Yeah,
certainly
yeah,
does. So,
yeah.
what advice do you have for somebody who may find technology maybe scary or overwhelming? Um, and what advice do you have regarding maybe ways to cope with that or ways to help them learn about things?
I I um I always told people, and I still stay true to this, is tech can be a little intimidating, but it's just because there's a lot going on. But also, do not be so cruel to yourself to make yourself think that you have to know every bit and piece about that tech, because you don't. You know, uh, For example, it's funny because like I was talking with some friends of mine and they were going on about how the iPhone still has 60 hertz refreshable screens and the Pixel 9's already like at 150 or something like that. And I got to thinking like that sounds cool and all, but I don't think the average person even knows what that is and let alone cares about it, right? And that's my thing here is like don't worry about how much what core processor you have or like I mean all that stuff. You know, does it have a 3.2 boost speed on it? Like that, none of that matters really. Like there's help for that. You can reach out to just so many people um, about your tech, and you don't have to memorize it all. You just got to get it running the right way.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you know, and like I told people all the time, like there really isn't much that you can break that I can't fix. You know, and you don't have to memorize every single key command. Just memorize the ones that you plan on using. That's it. That's all we ask, right? So, you know, if you're intimidated by the tech and scared of the tech, just kind of take it into bite-sized chunks, and that's kind of our jobs as AT professionals too. Is you know we can't just walk in and dump a full, um, you know, build sheet of what the perfect computer looks like to somebody. They're gonna be like, well, that's a little much, right? I mean, it even scares
Mm-hmm.
me. But what we can do is just tell them, hey, like, you know, this computer, these specs, go turn it into your Best Buy and have them give you something that matches, and it'll work fine, right?
Yeah.
So just kind of, you know, give people bite-sized pieces of it until they get the full plate. I mean, you know, nobody sits down for dinner and eats the entire thing on the plate with the plate included, you know, so don't do it with tech either.
That's true.
Yeah, yeah, it's piece by piece, man.
Any last questions, Lori or Katie? We're almost at the end of our hour.
I would ask, how has assistive technology empowered you in either your professional or personal life?
Um, because it's empowered me because everything we deal with today has some sort of computer something going on. You know, I mean, things as we, at least for me, like I wouldn't think of is that like, you know, there's, uh, there's screwdrivers on the market these days that, you know, have chips in them to track them. Like that's crazy for me to think about. Uh, you know, there's fuel injected chainsaws, which is another crazy thing for me to think about. And I guess what I'm getting at is this tech is it's the way forward. Um, you know, whether you think it's gonna be here in the next 20, 30, 40 years, I don't know about that, but I do know that right now there's money to be made in it and there's work to be had in it. So you might as well get to learn it now if you're after some work and some money, right?
Mm-hmm.
Hopefully you get paid for your work. Um, so, you know, even if you're a mechanic, right? Yeah, everybody thinks of mechanics as just big screwdrivers, hammers, and wrenches. But you are not a good mechanic. You cannot, it's impossible to be a good mechanic these days. If you do not know at least the basics to network systems and
Mm-hmm.
communications, because there's a lot of modules in these cars that you have to understand. And and to communicate with those modules, you need a computer. And for me, I need a computer that has JAWS, right? So, I mean, I'll go back to the fuel injected chainsaw. If you change uh you know, if you change a piston size on that chainsaw because you took your old skill set and gave it some more power, well now you gotta adjust the fuel injection chip that's in there. Uh I mean this stuff is everywhere. It's everywhere, you
Yeah.
guys. And
It's
when it'll take a lot for it to
it's
go away.
yeah, it's an
Yeah.
example of you have to embrace it because it's becoming more and more of your life.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you look at history and we've always kind of had that fight between human and technology.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's
Oh yeah,
always been a thing,
The
you know.
Industrial Revolution.
that's
Oh
right.
yeah. It has never gone away and it's still here, right? And it's always going to be here.
Yeah.
Eli, we asked this of all our presenters. If folks are curious to learn more about you and they read the blog, are you on LinkedIn? Are you in a public space where people can connect with you?
Yep, I'm on LinkedIn.
Okay. Is it just look up Eli Sanchez on LinkedIn if folks are interested?
That's me.
All right. Hey, Eli, it's been a pleasure having you with us on Career Conversations. Thank you for all that you do, your curiosity, and we appreciate you.
Oh, no, thank you guys for having me here.
Yes, thank you for joining us, and thank you to our participants as well.